Good afternoon, everyone. It is the 10th of October. It's already 10 days into this month, and this is the middle school assessment coordinators meeting. We've got not a lot of new things, but some important timelines that we will want to cover today as we look at the future. Hopefully the school year's gotten off to a good start for you. And I'm going to share my screen with the slide deck. And so we'll get rolling right now. First of all, the agenda for today, we're just going to touch base on some of the resources that are available to you. But really the purpose of this is not just so that I can hear myself talk. It's also, if you have questions, keep in mind that most likely everyone else will have similar kinds of questions. If you do want to ask a question that is, really specific to a situation in your school, just hang out with us after I finish recording, and we'll take individual questions or connect with us, email, etc. So we'll be taking a look at just briefly at resources. The climate survey is in the field, so we'll talk about that. The Apple Spanish language proficiency for grade 8 DLI DBE is also coming up. And then the most important topic of this meeting will be about the access test. We'll be giving you timelines of what's going on and some things to start thinking about. Even though it's only October, December will come up pretty quickly. We'll also, at the end, we'll finish up with the ever-present, ever-popular opt-out question. So please make sure that you, if you don't know, nothing has changed, but we'll make sure that we're clear about that. So again, our team, myself, Sarah Wallner, Jamie Anderson, as the assessment team in Research, Assessment, and Improvement Department in Central Office, and we also work closely with Stacy Will, Student Services, Ben Kolash, and the team from Multilingual Education. So if there's ever any questions about any of this, it's really critical that you ask, and we'll make sure that the right team member gives a response. And we often, if there's a question that we're unsure of, we'll talk amongst ourselves, and we'll make sure that it's happening. Today, Jen Kluterman is here from the Multilingual Education team. Jen, I appreciate your time being here as well. So as a coordinator, whether it's for the forward test, if it's for access, it's for the screeners, please keep in mind that there is a resource page for middle school coordinators, and on that will be today's recording. The slide deck and the running agenda is there as well. We'll also throw some resources on that page. If you haven't been to that page yet, there is a coordinator test window calendar that you can add to your Google Calendar simply by clicking on a little plus sign at the bottom. And what that does, this calendar is only for middle schools. So if you wanted the high school calendar for whatever reason, you could also add that by going into the high school coordinator page. So resources there available. And again, we're all pretty easy to connect with and talk to. We really want to be responsive and understanding and responding to your needs quickly. So please reach out to us. All right. So let's just touch base on the climate survey, which is in the field right now. It is open and available for students. Again, remember the climate survey is available in English, Spanish, and Hmong for students. Staff has a climate survey that I believe is only available in English. Participation updates. The numbers will be pulled at the end of the day tomorrow from week 1, and the information will be shared with principals early next week. And then I think in the middle of next week, there's going to be come a point, they're working on this right now, so that it will update daily. So you can actually see how far, what percentage of students have responded to your school's climate survey almost live. That's coming. We're getting that taken care of. Staff and students both received an email and will continue to receive emails saying in the subject line, important, your MMSD class or climate survey link. And then within that is an individual link. So really, I can't copy and paste and send that over to somebody else. So it is specific to me. So what that does is check that off the list so I don't keep getting those emails. And then it's included in the participation count. Please find a time for students to participate in this. It's a great way of getting their perspective on what they're feeling, how they're doing in the classroom at the start of the year. We'll also have a spring climate survey, of course, so kind of bookend it. And that also is really important because it really is a look back over this entire year. If you have questions, please connect with us and the survey team at MMSD surveys at madison.k12.wi.us. So once we're done today, I'll load the slide deck. I think you have it available on the agenda as well. So you can go in and click that link. It's live if you want to get the email. So send that to them and they'll get response to you pretty quickly. All right, let's talk about the Apple assessment. So again, it's like Access, which is an English language proficiency assessment. This one is for students who are learning a language other than English. In this case, specifically, our DLI students and in 8th grade. So there are 4 sections, just like there are in Access. The window will open at the end of this month and close in the middle of November. So information will go out to the Apple coordinators working with the team of the World Language and DLI support team here at Doyle. We'll get that information out to everybody. Students will need to have headsets. So kind of gearing up for Access testing, making sure you dig out those headsets. Again, headsets being over the ear as well as a microphone so that students can speak. Family letters updated will be available shortly. Those will also come out to you so that it can be sent via the best possible way to those families. And of course, those will be translated as well. All right, here's the topic of the day. Access for ELs. We will be opening the window this year. We're going to take the full state window allowable. So this is the date that the state says these tests open, December 2nd, 2024, and the window closes on the 31st of January, 2025. Now, obviously, we have winter break in the middle of that. So my encouragement, as you think about scheduling, as you think about how this is going to play out in your school, my suggestion is that you front load the test window. In other words, do as many assessments as you can prior to winter break, because coming back from winter break is always hard. We always have the question of what happens when a student goes with their family on vacation and they're gone for the full month of January. Okay, they obviously aren't going to be taking Access tests. Coming back from winter break and getting re-engaged into this is not always the easiest. I'm not saying that it's easy to do this. It is not. Let's put it this way. It's a challenge, I understand, but the more you can front load things, the better. So I'm going to go through a timeline. And so beginning today, Department of Public Instruction is pulling student data for the very first time. So when their computers connect with IC, they'll get a sense of who our English language learners are in MMSD, where they're at, what level they're at, etc. That's the initial to get things rolling for the rest of it. They will do a second data pull. So again, if the screening process has not been completed for whatever reason, if you have new students between October 10th, today, and the 24th of, actually the 23rd of October, those students will be included in the next data pull. Now, it's that data pull that actually creates things like labels. And labels are really important if you do alternate access. And everyone has students who are going to be taking the alternate access assessment. It also indicate they pull how much material you actually need, if you need any. So again, because this test is mostly online, you're unlikely to have any physical material. But writing booklets sometimes is appropriate. The alternate access kits, those will be sent based on this second data pull. Now, sorry, I put an abbreviation in the bottom of this, AMS, the Assessment Management System for WIDA. The platform itself opens on October 31st. So that's coming up at the end of this month. So we'll finally be able to get into the system. Now, what does that mean for you? Nothing yet. So don't stress on it. Remember, the 24th of October is that day when they pull data. We will be getting rosters and pulled together somewhere in that week before, and we will be using IC data to put together a roster as well as an accommodation list for each and every school. That will go out to you as the access coordinator, and the purpose is to review for accuracy. It's not to change things. We're often looking for a student that, for instance, has an IEP, but there's no indication of any supports needed for access or alternate access. So that will be a question. So what's true with that IEP? That list of students, again, also thinking about making sure you know the number of and who is actually identified as an English learner in your building. It does not mean that they have said yes to support. So they could say, no, we're not going to do that, but they are still identified as an English learner, and they would still be expected to test. And that is not coming from us, that is coming from the state and from the federal government. So that information needs to come back to us. The changes will be completed, need to be completed by November 7th. Now, once that all happens, Sarah and Jamie quickly start putting things into the AMS software, making sure that all students have the little boxes checked behind their name, that the student needs to have headphones, noise reduction, they need to be in a small group. All the accommodations that are possible will be turned on behind the scenes. And because access is still ticket driven, meaning you can't use ClassLink for it, tickets will be printed and sent to you the week of November 18th. So you will get tickets for this. Now, these are considered secure materials, so please handle them and just keep them out of sight from all students. Remember, the process is reading and listening first, followed by speaking and writing. So we'll go more into that next month. If you have students who need alternate access, that material will arrive in the district on or about November 22nd. We'll get that out to you as soon as possible. There may, for instance, let's say you have 4 students who need to have alternate access and only 1 arrives. We can order materials as soon as the window opens, and they are really good about getting a quick turnaround. So window opens on the 2nd. we can start ordering materials. Please understand that you may not have all the alternate access materials on day one of the window, but it will be here pretty quickly. All right, let's keep going. Now, one of the critical pieces is that the staff members who are giving WIDA access actually know and understand how to administer this assessment. Without that, the results are typically invalid and it's a waste of people's time. We don't want that. So when you've got this slide deck available, click on the Access Training Overview, and that will give you some details about what training needs to be done, how long it takes, etc. So let's take a look at two different cases. If you're a staff member who's brand new to MMSD or brand new to the profession, you've never done this before, you've never given access, or someone you've changed roles or changed schools and now you never had to do it, but now you do. Someone who's never gone through the access training will need to do the following things. Number one, they will need to email to get a WIDA account set up. And you email the request to WIDA screener@ and then madison.k12.wi.us. So WIDA screener@. That's also where if you've got all kinds of questions, and I'm sure some of you have already are well aware, if you've been giving WIDA screener to newly enrolled students, etc., you know this email address. Once somebody requests an account that's set up, they will get access, and there will be an email to them saying, here's the access for this. You will need to complete the online access for ELL's administration module on the wida.wisc.edu website. So there's a module with a series of things that you need to complete, including a quiz at the end in which you must score at least an 80% correct in order to be certified. And of course, you can take this multiple times so you can be certified. You can make sure you get your certification. If you are going to be giving the alternate access, that requires an additional module of professional development. So there's an alternate access administration and scoring module. So you'll have that is also needed to be completed. Again, the whole purpose is to ensure that we're giving these assessments properly. Suppose that you've done this a few times. Okay? There are a lot of people in the district who've already given access throughout their careers a number of times. You do not have to take the entire module. So again, you log into your wida.wisc.edu account, go to the module, and then you can just review it if you want, or go straight to the quiz. And again, you have to pass it with an 80% in order to be certified. So all staff who are giving the access or the alternate access do need to be certified, and that is kept track of. So please make sure that you are doing that. All right, let's move on. So as with any assessment, there are always a bunch of questions. So that's what this slide is about. So it's kind of random, but keep in mind, again, if you have any questions, any concerns, any issues, please email WIDA screener@, and we'll take care of it. So it's a team that includes folks from both the assessment team, multilingual programs. Stacy from Student Services is available. If there's a question for her, we'll make sure that she's in on that. So it gets a team approach to solving any kind of question that you have. Of course, there are always questions about, if I have students in this program, they're not in my school, or they're in Madison Promise, so they're not in physical attendance in a school building, who tests those students? So the answer is that if their primary enrollment is with you in your school, they would be that would be the first the first choice of where I would go. So the expectation would be that if their primary enrollment is with you, then they would be invited to come in and take that assessment. We know Madison Promise is a little bit different. Working with Andrew Stendal is absolutely great. So we'll work with him to make sure that the students that need that get the information, the invitation, and we'll see where they go from there. So again, it's primary enrollment. If, for instance, a student is in something like Restore, where they're really not allowed back in your school, we'll take care of arranging with the staff there to ensure that they actually get tested. All right. So a new student arrives to your school on January 6th. What do you do? First thing is you go through the same process of enrollment as you always do. So again, the enrollment includes a home language survey. And if that indicates that the student may be an English learner, then you get the WIDA screener and you do the screener on the student, have the student take the screener. If that indicates that the student is an English learner, then we can go through the process of getting them all set up into AMS to do access testing. We can't assume that every student who walks in and has a second language spoken in their home, they're not necessarily an English learner. So if they're new to the country, that's usually where this comes in. If they are they're coming to us from another school district, typically that data will follow them. We may not have their access scores, but we will know whether or not they are an English learner. And so that will be already established, and then they will need to be added to access database. But sometimes students come in pretty late into the window. So the cutoff date, in other words, if a student comes before the 24th of January, I would like you to make every effort to go through the process and ensure that you test this student, because this is really good information. I know that last week in January is a crazy time. It's the end of semester. We may have a snow day or two. So please make sure that you understand that last week, if somebody arrives then, I am not going to really push hard at all on you to say that student also, if they arrive on Wednesday, I don't want you to go in and say, well, you have to sit down and take this access test. So just trying to be a little humane for both the student and for you. So that last week in January is typically time for makeups or to catch one student has one more section to do, etc. The question comes up every year about the alternate access assessment. Who should be the one to administer it? And my answer to that is actually another question. Which staff member knows that student better? Is it the CC staff member? Is it the ESL staff member? Who will be able to work with that student the best to get the best possible opportunity for them to show what they know on the alternate access? It could be a combination. One staff member will be there for the writing and the speaking. One could be there for the reading and the listening. But both staff members will need to be trained and go through that process of professional development on how to give the access. So that is something that is really important, but that needs to be worked out at the local level. It needs to be a conversation between staff members, and make sure that you support each other in this process. So, all right, I'm going to just stop there for a moment and see if you have any questions about access testing. Because if you don't, let's just keep rolling. All right, every year we get questions about opting out of assessments. So let's talk about that. Now, the expectation from the state, now we're talking about state mandated assessments. So in middle school, that's going to be access and alternate access. That will be the forward test, and that will be the dynamic learning map test. So we've got 4 assessments that are going to be considered to be mandated by the state. In which case, when a student does not test on any one of those, we, meaning MMSD, must provide a reason why they didn't test, because they are expected to test. So that's the first thing. Another bit of background information is the expectation from the state is that 95% of all students of all students will take the test. Now, who is that? Well, for instance, 95% of each demographic group. So the all student group and each racial ethnic group after that. 95% of English learners, 95% of students with an IEP, and 95% of those students who are economically disadvantaged are all expected to test, and that's the number we're going for. So if you've got a participation rate of 95%, yay, but ask the question, what about these other groups? So with that background information, let's go into the opting out process. So first of all, both the state and the Board of Education in Madison allow students to opt out, their families to opt out of state mandated tests. The state says 4, 8, and 10th graders only. The Board of Education in Madison said, no, we're going to allow any student, any family to opt their child out of a state mandated test, or any test if that's that the district gives. But the following has to happen. First of all, we need to have that in writing. It can't be just a phone call to the principal or to anybody saying, yeah, this is Tim's guardian and I don't want him to test. It needs to be in writing, and it needs to be shared with either Jamie Anderson or myself, and the email addresses are right there as we keep track of those around the district. The writing should be specific. It shouldn't say all exams or all tests. It shouldn't say all standardized tests. It should say, I would like to opt my student out of the forward exam, would be an example. Now, what constitutes writing? Could be an email, could be a handwritten note. In cases with where language is an issue and that a teacher has a relationship with the family via chat or text, taking a screenshot would be fine if you know, in fact, that is the family that you're talking to and not the student. Sending me a text saying, I would like me to opt out. Yeah, we don't want that. A caveat: access for English language learners does not have an opt-out available. Families cannot opt out of this assessment. This is a really important assessment in the whole process of developing English proficiency. Now, that being said, we know that there's many ways of actually opting out, including just crossing my arms and sitting back and saying, go ahead and make me take this test. We don't want to get to that situation. If a student or a family says, I don't want my child, or I'm not going to take this test, if it's really clear, don't push it. I mean, we really want every student to give the opportunity to show what they know and are able to do. We will be listing that as declined to test within the platform. So keep in mind that if you ask or somebody sends an opt-out for access, we will record it as a decline to test. I am not, and if somebody says, can they? My answer is no, they cannot opt out. But here's what can happen. So it gets fairly nuanced fairly quickly. So if you have questions, please connect with us. Now, again, participation rate. Is it a big deal? State report cards are coming out and going to be made public in a few weeks. On the state report cards, there is no penalty for having less than a 95% participation rate. That being said, it doesn't help your scores and the look of the report card by having small numbers of students test. The flip side is the federal identification, ESSA, the identification which is ATSI or TSI. That system does actually impose a penalty on the school. And it's not just for the overall participation rate. They look at each and every one of those 11 categories, starting with all students, the racial demographics, and what I call the service provision. So if, for instance, you have 100 students in the grade or in a group of a demographic group, 95 is the expectation for them to test. If you don't have 95%, what they'll do is they'll add into the denominator in this process the number of students it would be in order to equal or be greater than 95%. Unfortunately, those students would not have a score associated with them. So essentially, you're adding in zeros. So that particular piece it really hurts very quickly, especially if you're testing around 80%. That will be a huge number of zeros added to the score, and it makes a difference. This will affect the identification status of targeted support and improvement, TSI, and it would also affect the ability to exit ATSI, additional targeted support and improvement, or it could be the thing that flips it so that you are now identified with student groups in ATSI, for instance. So all of this is to say, we really want to encourage as close to 100% participation in all these exams as possible. It does make a difference. We're working hard to ensure that student groups or students actually understand that the data is something that is being used at the school level, not just sent off into the ether where nobody ever looks at it. So with that, we're going to kind of wind up. Again, please ask us questions at any time about anything that is dealing with assessment. If you have a data or data protocol or a question about dashboards or how do I find this, we may redirect you to the school support request process. That helps us in understanding the real-time needs of schools so that we can be better prepared in the long run. It also puts a team on your request, and so that you get that responded to more quickly. If, however, I don't want you to think that you have to put in a request if there is a problem with testing, if there's technical issues, a student can't get in, we get some kind of an error message, please let us know directly. Don't put that in a school support request. Pre-assessment day, during the day of the assessment, and post-test support is definitely what we do, and the team that is here to support you in that process. So speaking of which, our team is, again, myself, Sarah, and Jamie. We have both phone numbers and emails. Stacy is here. Ben is listed here. And then also the other emails that we have that you get group support and responding to. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and open it up if there's any questions for the group. I'd be happy to entertain them now. And I'm going to stop recording.